Hello, have you ever wondered what the true 4 weeks or 5 weeks in the life of a Berlin startup software engineering would be like? Well, I'm gonna tell you about my last 4 to 5 weeks and what fantastic projects I've been shipping and give you a little overview of the adventures I had. So, this is the regular app that we have, and yeah, let me just start this main product that we have, this energy check. It's a pretty cool thing. You can find out about how your house is doing and what improvements could be made. I filled this out many times, so I'm already quite proficient in it. Okay, and now it will calculate a score for our house and what we could improve on. And this is already what I was working on, but first I want to show you guys what the status quo was, and it's essentially this widget here showing your house, how much you can save, and all the different measures you could do to improve it. And if you clicked on details, it would go to the analysis page and it would show you these different tabs about Euro, energy, and CO2, and the cost after renovating, and your savings. And you have a CTA to make a consultation with our company. On the right, it would show you all the measures that you could do. And down here are some CTAs. There's also, of course, a mobile view for all of this. And if you were to click on one of these measures, you would go to this page right here, which breaks down the measure itself. Finally, we have this explore page where you just see all the measures, and you can click on them again and go here. So my goal was to implement the revamp of this page. So our PMs came up with some ideas alongside with the designers on how to make this more attractive or more appealing, to clean it up a little bit. And that is what I was working on for the last 4 weeks. The first thing that was revamped was this analysis widget for the robo, we call it, because it's a robotic or not a non-human advisor. It's an algorithm basically that gives you a first glance of what you can do to improve your house. And then when you click on it, you go to the analysis page, which also is redesigned here. And yeah, the explore page has not really been changed, but there's a big crucial difference here that is not immediately obvious, which is that the algorithm behind this, which recommends what you should improve on your house, basically what is really worth it, such as the heat pump, Wärmepumpe, usually it's the best return of investment. So this algorithm will look if you do all the renovations and if you do each single. And that is how we come up with this big long list of all the measures. Here I'm already spoiling it. So the recommendation was the new big feature. And what the recommendation means is that we pick the best 4 measures that have the best amortization time. And then we calculate the robo again, this algorithm, we calculate it again, not with all the measures, not all the measures used as renovation, but only the 4 top renovations. And then we display this here. We show then on this page all the recommended ones and all these numbers. So the energy cost, the savings, the maximum subsidy, the cost of renovation, total cost, they are all about the recommended measures. And this feature is still not quite finished yet, and I will walk you through what it took to build this. To me, this actually seems quite simple. I'd be surprised it takes 4 weeks to build. If I were to build work at my own company or something like this, I would expect it to maybe take less time. But it is actually quite a challenging project with many details and negotiations. So let me walk you through it. So the first initial period, I spent roughly a week or 2 weeks just designing this with dummy numbers, like with mock numbers. I just focused on the markup and so the JSX and React, and focusing on the layout and all the different conditions, because there's also an empty state for this. And just to show you, I pulled off the empty state, created a new account with empty data, and you see it's so all of these things have to align in a decent way and satisfy constraints and whatnot. And as it so happened for this particular design, the design is a bit weird because mainly because of this here. The way these are arranged is a little weird in my opinion, as they are not, there's lots of white space here, and the first approach I took, it wasn't so good. I used like a flex row, nested flex row, and now I use a table, which works better. But also designs themselves had some inconsistencies in them, which greatly increased the complexity and effort of the front end, because it ended up having many conditional re-renders. There was like a matrix of empty state, non-empty state, and mobile view, non-mobile view, where things would flip around and switch around. And also currently we don't have a tablet view. That also added complexities, and the titles were too long, and the titles came from the backend, so it was tricky and required negotiations on how to do exactly what. With negotiations, I mean, there's different stakeholders. There's my PM, who has certain opinions and things he wants. Mainly he wants to quickly release and iterate, which I understand. I have designers who have opinions on how things should be, which I also understand, but it's sometimes you have to find compromises, and that's sort of my role, is to understand what is feasible and what not, and what is how expensive, and then find compromises. But so this widget did not take all this much time to build. What took a good chunk of time was this analysis page, and here just building it, yeah, it took some time. I don't quite remember how much, like a week. Remember, each of this component, I had to build it more or less. There were some constraints. There are some questions, for example, should these text here align, that you have to wonder about, and it's just hardcore. But then this might not be communicated so well in the designs, and then you have to ask designers, but then you can sort of tell how much they value certain details versus others, and how in general people value certain details. Because at the end of the day, it would not be so wise if you go crazy on certain details no one really cares about, and you're super slow, and yeah, people don't really appreciate it, and not even the users might appreciate it. So there's always like this spectrum of attention to detail. The big thing that took a long time here is that after roughly 2 weeks or so, I was mostly done with this, and I found then out by the flexible organization of the startup that I work at, that actually the numbers here are not yet finalized, and that in any case there needs to be an additional work made to this algorithm, the robo algorithm, and that the person working on this has other priorities right now, and there will be like a 3 to 4 weeks delay, because we are also like in some other migrations right now. Some big changes are being made, and so while I enjoyed working a lot on this project, it was quite fun, it was tricky that it would maybe be delayed by a couple of weeks. That's never really good if you're in the middle of stuff and you want to release it, because things can easily stagnate or become stale and have various problems and be very tedious to release. So as the full stack developer that I originally am, I talked to the person responsible for doing this algorithm, and who's a really nice guy, by the way, very smart, does great work. And I could read between the lines that it would be okay, or it would maybe be possible if I just do it myself. And so it took me like a couple of days to figure out how this algorithm works. It's like the most difficult and complicated part maybe in our company. Well, there's two. There's how the service work, and how, I mean, if you want to modify basically the system, there's like a way you can add service. It's quite easy, but then changing the system itself is quite difficult, and there has been some crazy bugs but also this algorithm on how to determine how your house is doing, it also is quite complicated. So this is then what I spent some days discovering on how things are going, and making hypotheses and testing them. So if I maybe to do this, then do that, how things go. And this is how it went, and it's actually something I quite like about my job when it comes up, is that I had some ideas that I also discussed with my coworker who was responsible for this algorithm, and he had not worked on this implementation for a really long time, so I forgot mostly about it. He was working on like newer things, and so I was mostly on my own, and also some of the things that we thought were true were not really true. So initially it looked like a really simple fix on how to change it. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just going to show you real quick roughly how the code looks. It's not very revealing, but it just shows a high-level overview of how we basically go over the building parts which correspond to the measures, and we calculate stuff. And the goal was to just have a list of measures and then just do this calculation only based on this list. And initially we thought that going through this is how the job would get done. But later I found out that it's actually a bit more tricky and complicated on more lower level. It must be said that the algorithm, the basics of how it works, the most fundamental low level of how it works, is a bit tricky and outside of my area, as it exactly pertains to how energy consultation is done or how the laws of physics work there. So there's some calculations, how thick are your windows, how many windows do you have, some hard-coded values there, at least so far we're doing it that way, that then determine on the, like, what could be improved in your house. And these calculations, they are obviously its own niche of expertise. And as a full stack developer, I will not really work on this, though I wouldn't be against it necessarily, but per se. But what I do is I just get a task or something like this, and then I learn myself how things go. And so it was here similar. I learned as much as I could about this robo and incorporated it where needed. But I did not learn the inner, deeper areas of it. If I keep working in this area with this algorithm, this is obviously going to change. But so for this project, I learned enough to change it. And yeah, I successfully changed it, and it was a bit tricky. It took some testing, and but yeah, at the end it all worked out, and I was quite happy that I was able to sort of reverse engineer or understand how this algorithm works and then change it in such a way. And then after it was changed, this colleague of mine, he became then also a stakeholder, because he had the responsibility or an interest that these numbers were correct, so that my changes would be good changes and not basically break the calculations, that the numbers might be wrong or something like this. So we then did a lot of QAing together, where we went through examples and the numbers to see if they were correct. And then finally, he realized, which was good, that if we release these changes, the old customers, this algorithm is only calculated when you fill out the survey, but we have some old customers who have filled out all the surveys, and they wouldn't be able to see these new results. And some of these displays depend on this new recommended section, which they would be missing. So we would have to migrate them somehow. And at this point, the front end was ready for review and also approved mostly. And at the same time, there were plenty of QA changes that I added, so I was very busy doing not so difficult work. And then one of the bigger roadblocks happened on Friday, this Friday actually, where the migration, we tested it, it worked on staging, so only as a test. But then we tried to do it on production, and yeah, working in a startup, silly things happen. So basically, first environment variable wasn't existing in production, even though it should have been, but then also it just somehow didn't work mysteriously. And yeah, like we were trying to debug it, but then stuff got in the way. And so basically now it's like a bunch of negotiation with different people to enable certain things and this and that. And because basically it's the limits of the infrastructure that currently we have, as we're not a massive big company with like established engineering infrastructure. And so there seemingly is not so much you can do, but then I realized, sleeping on it, that I could just do a different kind of migration where the system checks every time someone logs in, basically, if they have the new or the old version, and if they have the old version, we just recalculate it, recompute it with the new one, which should be very inexpensive. And that's what I'm gonna do this next week. I'm gonna implement this and then merge the things, and then I will be done with this feature. That was quite a large feature in this sense. So to recap, working, at least in my experience in these startups, it's like you have these chaotic things. You have to know the stakeholders and know sort of where you can strike compromises so that things get shipped, and then also you can of course iterate on them with when there's like a reasonable need and whatnot. And it's really easy for projects to get delayed because of small or bigger roadblocks that are not easily to predict, because always something will go wrong. Like in this case, our SQS queue from AWS, it's not really working on production the way we wanted to, and debugging this on production is difficult because there's no logs, and then there's also like other problems, and so these are not easily predictable things. Like you can predict that something like this might go wrong, but you can never really predict what and like prepare for it adequately. But yeah, I'm quite happy with this sort of full stack work where you sort of implement things and then you just like take full ownership and try to fix all the little puzzles that come along the way. So I hope you found this little intro interesting. So I hope you found this little overview of my last couple of weeks and what I've been doing interesting and insightful about what it is like to work in a Berlin startup and doing some good work there and shipping some good stuff and making the world a better place. So yeah, thank you for watching this and have a fantastic day. Goodbye.